Hadar, a world where affection and gentleness were expressed and explored fluidly. The vessels were felt as part of the ocean of oneness. Love and sensuality were free as a river unstoppable. Within the awareness of oneness, nothing had to be held back, controlled, or restricted. Love didn't have to get a permission, as it wasn't questioned. There was no reason to hide or protect. The openness and bareness of all parts of oneness were seen and felt as the highest expression of beauty. And they were very beautiful on Hadar, as the beauty of their heart also expressed itself through their vessels, probably comparable to the Venusian beauty in many ways. Feelings were transparent, as they were completely free of judgmentalness. Exclusion didn't exist there. Wild meadows, cuddling puddles of beings, energetically merging on all levels in a space free of time and any sense of a rush. The rhythm of being was free to flow from within itself, no matter if fast or slow. Punishment, blame, and weaponized shame were foreign concepts here. Free, honest expression was celebrated with compassion and thankfulness. The shelters were integrated in nature, though because of the absence of judgmentalness, the absence of orders of control and holding back, there was no need for hiding or secrecy. Beings felt loved there, even when they were seen, as they were seen with gentleness in their whole range of feeling, being, and expressing. Mutual love and trust didn't have to be built or achieved in this world, as it was already intrinsically here. It could be woven in freely without hindrance or mistrust. It was a given from birth to death and beyond. Energetically, the communion is continuous and aware in feeling. One body of natural source energy liquid, nourishing oneness in and beyond form. Beings here enjoy feeling, communing, bearing, and sharing. Clothes, if any even were worn, which they usually were not, were of very light, flowy, and often quite transparent natural fabric. There were no machines or any known technology in my memory, at least not the common idea of what technology is, as there was no reason for its existence. The communion was already within this collective body of oneness, and its exploration of formlessness in form. Overpowering or having to achieve or prove anything was unnecessary in this place. The love didn't have to be reached, as there was no artificial scarcity or denial of it. There was no gate or door to be opened, as it was just allowed to be expressed without demands. If there is one motivation of the Hadarians to highlight, then it is to feel deeper and deeper, being and feeling, and including all within it. The concepts of conditioning or resisting the touch of this unconditional communion were unknown. This world was very green, and the communion itself was like limitless water. The idea of not enoughness when it comes to resources and individual beingness in its process didn't exist at all. The wholeness and completeness within every being was acknowledged throughout the whole range and spectrum of their process and evolution in form and consciousness and beyond. The body, the vessel, was honored in this world. They didn't see it as something to transcend or overcome, nor as a limitation, though as another way of feeling, experiencing, and exploring their communion, another portal to feel this limitless love of oneness. This world didn't have a fixed concept of time, as the internal rhythm wasn't bound to achieving worthiness, nor was death experienced as a definitive loss. The nourishing of compassion and sensitization of feeling deeper is probably the closest that would come near the linear idea of progress. Competition was also very unknown. In this world, quite irrelevant. Superiority and inferiority ideas were recognized as weapons of separation and numbness. It would only cause disconnection and lead to loops of reaching for what can already be here. This world honored feeling the limitlessness of communion. Why would they not want to feel it? When their world was invaded by wounded and war-torn warriors in desperation of internal terrors of separation and numbness, they felt this encounter, as cruel as it might have appeared, as a fated experience, a possibility to feel even deeper, to restore communion where it had been torn apart or never was there. It was the first time they experienced resistance to their love. It was the first time that they witnessed beings that defended their own numbness as if it would be the most precious thing. They could sense the helplessness beneath the armor of their invaders, the deception within their illusion of strength through the exertion of violence. They've never been home in heartfelt communion. Within the loving communion of Hadar, everyone was worthy of love. It wasn't even a question, of course. So their encounter of beings that perceived themselves of unworthy to truly opening up towards this love had been a tremendously painful experience for the communion. Their invaders' worthiness was based on achievement, force, and control. The exertion of power seemingly determined the value within their tribe. Violence even honored and celebrated. They saw being above or below someone as a necessity. The Hadarians were not really a threat to the invaders, as at this stage they haven't had any planetary defenses, so at first they weren't completely eradicated. The invaders didn't see any reason to waste resources on erasing them fully. There was also no honor or achievement in it that would have been of any value for them at this stage. They demonstrated their violence punctually to satisfy their idea of hierarchy, and out of their perspective also to gain respect, to make clear who is in charge, so to say. The invaders were quite intelligent on a level of mind in the logical sense. They were of a very calculating and strategical nature, always looking toward how to gain profit and take advantage. The Hadarians were of a very sensual nature. The planet had been flourishing in peace and bared many fruits, many resources untouched, because the Hadarians were communicating with the elements most often without harvesting or mining them, while the invaders pleased themselves and mm, started utilizing the resources for their technological advancement and let themselves be served by the Hadarians and nourished, the Hadarians had time to feel into these beings of contrast. They studied them meticulously and were looking for ways to let them feel the unconditional nature of love, to let them taste what true natural communion feels like. They saw the danger emanating from the repressed state of their invaders and could see the potential chain reaction it could have on the surrounding planets. The only pathway the Hadarians saw at this point in their situation was impacting their invaders in ways that some level of healing can happen within them. It had to be a very subtle endeavor, as the pride and illusion of strength in harshness was very challenging and competitive in interaction. So there were seeds of kindness planted wherever there was the possibility and chance. And the Hadarians, with their emotional intelligence, gave their best to show their invaders and expose them to all they weren't able to tap in themselves: compassion, gentleness, understanding, unconditional presence. The Hadarians felt through an immense amount of stuck pain within their invaders' emotional bodies. Barely any of them shared openly, though the Hadarians volunteered as a ventile because by their assumption the amount of stuck pain that needed to be released could take many, many lifetimes. And they saw the need for some kind of release. As they learned through the invasion of Hadar, they recognized that hurt beings seem to hurt beings. The tremendous amount of stuck pain they saw as a bigger danger than the destruction of their own kind. What amount of pain would be birthed into the omniverse if their invaders would keep operating from this place? There was some progress on an emotional level with a few individuals, though it was an exception. Most of the invaders just looked down upon the Hadarians as they weren't operating within the same hierarchical value systems and didn't even try to participate in it, which was quite an unsettling experience for the invaders, as they weren't capable of controlling the Hadarians as much mentally through these hierarchical pressures. Even though the Hadarians basically were enslaved physically, their heart, their spirit, their mind was unconquerable and free. It provoked aggression within the invaders. In some ways, they felt powerless and they were very unused to not having full control through their intellect and demonstration of power. They knew that their deceptions were recognized by the Hadarians, even if they didn't necessarily say that. The Hadarians penetrated to the essence of the core wound of their invaders. They felt exposed and seen in a way they haven't even been able to dig towards themselves. The invaders perceived it as a threat. Vulnerability was seen as a weakness in their culture, a potential tactical danger in executing their goals. There were a few of them that opened up to themselves in the company of Hadarian presence, though the majority closed off. Also because the strategical commando of this race was concerned that they'd lose track of their initial mission, though most invaders regulated themselves anyways due to not feeling ready to meet their body of stored up emotions. There was a seemingly endless well of repressed fear that they would have never dared to admit. So they chose to numb themselves even more and to go against the Hadarians more cruelly, so that they haven't had to face what was coming to the surface from within them. Their mission became to destroy and repress the Hadarians so that they could continue to repress themselves. There was a point in history of this planet where the Hadarians, from a more logical point of view, should have given up on giving to their invaders so openly, though they genuinely believe to this day that the healing of this core wound is possible. The communion didn't need any boundaries within their awareness of oneness and unconditional love, though even if they would have, there weren't many options to draw boundaries with their invaders back then. They did what felt essential. They planted seeds in places that were almost devoid of love and feeling. As much pain and destruction was experienced, from within their limitless love there really was no other choice. And should just a few of these seeds have sprouted within the beings they opened to, should it have begun to spread through the galaxies, it was worth it. And the home of the communion lives in our heart, is of eternal nature. It couldn't even be taken away by the darkest abyss. Our communion still is unconquerable, still is free of winning and losing. It just is. And we can bring and expand this communion again.